Hi there, this is Shawn Hansen, and I want to welcome you to this week's Sketchy Saturday. This week, there's more celebration to be done because Cindy's birthday is coming up, so I'm making a card for her. Cindy is Griffin's trainer and one of his favorite people in the whole wide world. Shelly and I also adore her, and because she's all about dogs, in this card we're going with a fun dog theme. The sketching is going both outside and inside this time. And I'll confess right now, this drawing gave me fits, as you'll see. Well, not the whole drawing, just the dog's legs when I get to the inside. Sheesh, I could not figure it out. Last week, I told you all about the traditions behind birthdays and cakes, so I can't razzle and dazzle you with that stuff. So instead, I thought it would be fun to talk about how Cindy and Griffin met. Griffin is the first dog we've had that we've raised alone. Every other dog I've had before him, and all of the dogs Shelly and I have had together, have been part of our own little pack of beasties. But we got Griffin shortly after losing the last of our dogs, Dory. Shelly and I wanted to devote time to taking Griffin to obedience training, so we asked our vet, another person we adore, who she'd recommend. And that's how we got Cindy's name and contact details. As soon as Griffin was old enough to be in her surviving puppyhood class, we registered him. Shelly, Griffin, and I were really excited to go to the first class. We'd carefully done all of our preliminary paperwork and homework, and we felt really ready to be A-plus students. We were even the first people to show up, and we watched with growing excitement as others from the class arrived. Cindy's facility is about an hour and 15 minutes from where we live, and Griffin falls asleep in the car. So when we got there, we had to wake him up a bit and get him pottied before we were ready to get in line to be cleared to go inside the facility. Everything was going great. Griffin was awake, he'd peed and pooed, we'd cleaned everything up, we had all of our supplies ready to go, and so we headed to the front door of Cindy's facility. In addition to having to present Griffin's proof of vaccinations to Cindy before entering, there were also COVID protocols still in place then. So she had to ensure everyone was masked up and understood the layout inside that was designed to keep people at a safe distance from one another. Cindy checked people and pets in, one dog and its handlers at a time, to make sure everything was as it should be. Even though we'd arrived before anyone else, by the time we were ready to get into the line, we were about the third set of people waiting, which was no big deal until suddenly it was as if Griffin finally realized there were other dogs and people around him, and he started barking and barking and barking. He'd never done that with us or at home, and because we didn't know better, we weren't expecting him to go bonkers. None of my other dogs, and I've had 8 others as an adult, had ever barked at people or other dogs out of the blue like that. So Shelly and I were mortified. We were also well aware that we needed to get him to quiet down. Much of the preliminary paperwork and pre-class training talked at length about barking and the disruption it caused, as well as how to handle it. I immediately moved away from the line with him and began trying to calm him down. Meanwhile, Cindy came out to usher the next dog and handlers inside and gave us a well-deserved stink eye over the barking. Shelly and I were completely convinced we were going to be asked to leave. After everyone else had been allowed in, it was just us, and Griffin was slowly calming down. Cindy motioned to us to come back over, checked our paperwork, and ushered us in to the area right next to the door. Like I said, I was sure we were going to get tossed from class. Now, Cindy is one of the kindest, caringest people I know. But if you don't know her, she's pretty intimidating, and I'm not easily intimidated. She's tall, she has a very palpable presence in a group, and she has a very well-developed scowl she can turn on people who are making life hard for her, her dogs, or her clients' dogs. And at that moment, I think she was worried we were going to be some of those people. Of course, all the other dogs were being quiet and perfect, and their people looked at us with, "I am so glad it's your dog and not my dog doing that" faces. After a few minutes of introduction, Cindy told us she was going to see which of the dogs would take a little bit of cheese from her, and she started at the side farthest from us. She approached the dog, held out a bit of cheese, and waited to see how comfortable the dog was. The first two were a bust. No way were they going near that strange lady. The next dog went for the cheese and seemed comfortable, so Cindy tried to get it to sit. Nope. The fourth dog went for the cheese but didn't sit, and the fifth dog was also not having anything to do with the strange lady, which meant it was Griffin's turn. And I was sure he was going to go nuts and start barking again. And I also figured we'd be leaving class before it really even started. Miraculously, he went right up to her for the cheese. No hesitation, no fear, no barking, nothing. She moved the next bit of cheese to get him to sit, and his little butt went down like he'd been doing it his whole life. That had gone so well, she started walking to see if Griffin would follow along at her side, and he did. And then she moved the cheese to get him to sit again, and he sat. Suddenly, the little barker was a star, and Shelly and I breathed a sigh of relief. We figured we'd made it through the first class. If I'm being honest, I think Cindy was as relieved that he had done so well as we were. The little doggy delinquent had promise, which left only its humans. We were still a question mark. But we worked diligently each week, trained him every day, and every week he had his moments of being a star. Of course, he also had his moments of being nuts, which wasn't surprising given his age and his breed. As class went on, there were play periods for the pups, and Griffin enjoyed them, but he really wanted to play with the big breed pups more than he wanted to play with the littler ones. At some point, and I don't really remember how this transpired, Cindy invited us to come down for a play date with her dog, Cooper. Cooper, who's a few months older than Griffin, is an English Shepherd, so he's bigger by a lot, but they play so well together. In truth, the only other dog Griffin had played with at that point, outside of the short playtimes in class, was with my parents' dog, Connor, who is a Shepherd Rottweiler mix and really big. So I think Griffin felt totally comfortable with Cooper from the start. Since that first play date, we've had several more, and every time Griffin and Cooper get together, it's fun for all of us. Shelly and I learned a ton about how to be better people for Griffin in that first class, and Griffin enjoyed every single session. Not to mention, he cannot get enough of Cindy. So before that first puppy class ended, we'd signed him up for a second. And before that one was done, we'd signed him up for a third. After all of those, we tried some other classes, and we found out Griffin loves the field trip class, where we go to various areas by Cindy's facility and work while people and pets and other distractions are all around us. That's a great class for Shelly and me too, because it's outside. And after being in the car to drive down the hill, being outdoors is a real treat for all three of us. Plus, Griffin gets to catalog all kinds of new smells and sights and sounds when he's in more of a city setting. And did I mention he gets to see Cindy? I'm Shawn Hansen, and that's it for this Sketchy Saturday. If you enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot to me if you give it a thumbs up, maybe leave a comment if you're so inclined, and if you want to be sure not to miss my next Sketchy Saturday, don't forget to click the subscribe button.